She's giving her third speech from the Competent Communicator Manual. Get to the point. That's why we love Toastmasters. Get the point, get out, get the vote, move on. Okay. Her title is Pondering a Paradox. The goal of this speech is to have a specific purpose, and Lisa chose to share a paradox she discovered with two experiences that led to the creation of a paradox in Lisa's mind. And her goal is to articulate this paradox in a non-cattywampus way and leave you with something to think about. Please welcome Lisa with her 6 to 8 minute speech, Pondering a Paradox.
Fellow Toastmasters, I've been pondering this paradox for a few weeks now. As Bud mentioned, this is my get to the point speech, so let me be clear. I do not have an answer to this, but I'm planning on telling you about two experiences that I have had that have led to this paradox. And then I'll share some thoughts and some questions I have around this paradox with you before bidding you adieu. So let me start with my first experience. This happened a couple of weeks ago at the University of Kansas. I was attending a Food, Energy, and Water Nexus Symposium. And that's a really fancy way of saying a conference based on the connections between food, water, and energy. And so I was attending this conference. As you know, I work for the Environmental Protection Agency, so I have an involvement with the environment. And so I was at this conference with a bunch of other people interested in these topics as well. But there was other folks from all different walks of life attending this conference too. So there are designers there, architects, there are professors, all different kinds of walks of life. And so part of this conference was to have a brainstorming session so that all these different professionals can come together and think about different areas to research that we can make improvements in the fields of food, water, and energy. Since these are so interconnected and there are so many big problems, we were using these small brainstorming sessions to come up with ways that maybe we can come up with a targeted approach of how to make improvements across these different fields. And so I was broken up into a group of 5, and I was with an Australian social psychologist, I was with 2 architects, and a University of Kansas professor who taught ecology and evolutionary biology, and me, a life scientist with the Environmental Protection Agency. And so the 5 of us were in this group, and we were brainstorming and thinking about how can we make improvements to the food, water, and energy systems. What can KU target and research in order to make improvements? So we had a great discussion. We were able to bring our different perspectives from our different fields, our different experiences, and we were able to share and to listen. And we had an hour-and-a-half discussion. And what we got from this discussion, what we came up with for an area that we could research and to focus in on to make improvements in areas such as the food, water, and energy, we came up with the idea of making the invisible visible. I'll just say that one more time, making the invisible visible. And what we mean by that, this is best explained through an example. An example of that would be, when you step into the shower, you're not thinking of the water purification systems that the water went through in order to get to your shower. When you get into the shower, you're not thinking of the energy it took to warm up the water as it's coming out of your shower head. So that's what this concept is of making the invisible visible. There's a lot of different inputs that go into the resources that we currently have available to us. And so when you don't see the different inputs that go into that, such as the energy to heat the water or the water purification, you don't really think of it. And so it's a lot easier to just have the water go down the drain because you're not thinking of everything that goes into having that water there in the first place. And so by making that connection of everything that made those resources possible and present with you in the first place, you're going to be less likely to waste it when you realize the full value of exactly what you have coming out of your shower head or in other instances. So I left this conference feeling pretty good about this. I thought this was a great idea of making the invisible visible. So that is the first experience that I've had. So moving on to the second experience, about a week later, I was at a Montessori school for a meeting with my job, and I only found out what a Montessori was a couple of months ago myself. So in case you're not sure what it is, Montessori, it's a specific type of education, like a specific educational approach. And so schools that teach this educational approach are known as Montessoris as well. So anyway, as I'm waiting for my meeting to begin at the Montessori, I'm looking at the decorations they have on the walls. And on the walls, they have different traditional Montessori teaching tools. One that caught my eye, it's a tool called an object permanence box. And what this is, it is a box with a hole on the top and a little tray on the bottom. And how this works is that a child will put a ball in the hole in the box and it will roll out onto the tray on the bottom. And this is a teaching tool for children. It's introduced to children from the ages of 8 months to a year old. So they will put the ball in the hole of the box and it will roll out onto the tray. And the child will just keep doing that. They'll see the ball go through the hole and then it'll come out on the tray. And now what this is teaching is object permanence. And what that means is that something exists even though you still can't see it. So children at this young age of 8 months to a year, they still have this idea that when you can't see something, it disappears. That's the phenomenon of peekaboo. So when you go like this, children, they don't see you. You don't exist anymore. And then when you come back, you're back in their world. You're back into reality. And so this object permanence box teaches that concept that when you see the ball and then as it comes out the other end, you realize that's the same ball. It still exists even though I don't see it as it's going through the box. Now you may see where I'm going with this, with these two different connections. After I read this plaque on the Montessori wall of this object permanence box, this paradox hit me in my head like a ton of bricks. First, I find myself in a higher level, higher education institution. I am speaking with 4 other professionals of all different walks of life. They have seasoned backgrounds and all different kinds of experience, and we sit down and we speak for an hour and a half about how we can make improvements to the food, water, and energy systems. And the idea that we come up with of how to make these improvements is to make the invisible visible, to help people realize the inputs that go into the resources that we have. Shortly thereafter, I go to a Montessori and I learn that we are teaching children under a year of age that objects and things still exist even though we can't see them. So putting these two experiences together creates this paradox in my mind. So we know that things exist even though we can't see them, even though they have gone into something else. So we've been taught this since we have been young. And so as a result, why, thinking about all of this together, why don't we value the resources that we have, the things that we have with all the inputs that went into them? Why can't we realize the different inputs that went into creating, such as taking a shower, the water purification process that went into that water, into the energy that went into heating that and everything? Why can't we value the water that we have instead of just letting it go down the drain? And so why is there so much waste? And so these are the different ideas that are jumbling around in my head, and this is the paradox that I am experiencing. And I hope that you have found it as interesting as I do, and to leave you with something to think about. Thank you very much.